First and foremost, all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught and still teach me this truth. You know, peace and salutations to the Akim out there who are pushing for that penny a day, you know, for the reward of the kingdom. And to the rest of you believers, men, women, and children who have fled the shadow of this world and have taken hold, laid hold on eternal life. Shalom. Now, this lesson is going to be about shedding more light on the plans of the elite, the wicked rulers of this world, to transition, you know, the current economic and global model from what we have currently to a CBDC blockchain-based tokenized economy. You know, because what's coming is a fundamental shift in what money really is. And when you see the infrastructure being built, you see the new system that's being, you know, prepared, you ask yourself, well, how will they achieve, you know, such a massive shift without causing, you know, massive, you know, financial turmoil and avoiding, you know, public backlash? And, you know, they have plans in place. You know, they have plans in place. And one of the first things I want to do is, you know, just bring out a couple precepts here. You know, of course, this is 2 Corinthians 2 and verse 11. It says, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. All right, let's highlight a couple words here. All right, word here for get advantage of. Let's play it.
Strong's G 4122. Pleonecteo. Pleonecteo.
All right, and it says to have more or a greater part, to be superior, excel, surpassed, have an advantage over, or gain or take advantage of another, to overreach. All right, and if you look at the Strong's info, it says to be what? To be covetous. All right, by implication, to overreach, to get an advantage, to defraud. Right, to make a gain. Now we have to remember this enmity, you know, goes back to Jacob and Esau, you know, for the blessing. Right? So we have to remember that the hatred isn't just, oh, white man against black man, you know. It's more biblical, and it's also more spiritual. Right? So he's covetous of that blessing, right? And he wants to defraud us, you know, to be able to take hold, you know, of that blessing. And if you look up the word agneo, right? Agneo, it says as a negative participle, not to know through lack of information or intelligence, by implication, to ignore through disinclination, to not know or not understand, right? To be ignorant, to not to know, to understand, to err or sin through mistake or be wrong. So we can't be of them who are ignorant of what's coming through lack of information or intelligence, or to ignore, you know, what's coming. You know, the prophets have been, you know, very diligent in bringing out the information regarding what the mark of the beast system is. You know, we've been speaking about central bank digital currencies for years. We've been speaking about digital ID frameworks for years. You know, tokenization is another new push, you know, that brothers have been starting to expose, which all lead to creating an RFID microchip, which is going to be implanted within you, right? This is a digital prison that's being built. And you can't say, oh, We're ignorant because the information is being brought out, right? So now we have noema for device, and it says a perception, i.e. a purpose, intellect, disposition, device, mind, thought, right? An evil purpose, right? That which thinks the mind, thoughts, or purposes, right? So Esau has an evil purpose, right? And we can't be ignorant of that evil purpose, yo. So we have to keep on doing these videos to expose, what the evil purpose of the enemy is, so that we are not taken off guard. Psalm 64 and verse 5 says they encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily, right? They say, who shall see them? They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought and every one of them on the heart is deep, right? But what? But Yahweh shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. And that's starting with the ministry of the prophets. The scripture say, I've hewn them, by the prophets, right? So that wounding is starting with the ministry of the prophets. And then it's going to come to a physical wounding when Yahweh Shai himself, returns with the holy angels, and puts an end, to Esau's dominance, to Esau's rule, and throws a wrench, in his plans and disappoints him. So let's get into some information here. So I had a very long conversation here with the Gemini chat that I asked it to summarize so we can get some key points and not make this video too long, right? So the first thing I wanted to highlight is that America is a part of the new agenda. They're not separate. And the reason why I wanted to say that is because right now America is saying that they are against a CBDC, right? Because of privacy matters, They're saying, oh, we will never allow a CBDC to be established in America because we care about the privacy of our citizens and right? But it's all a smokescreen, because what they're doing is something that they have done before, which is shift the responsibility from the government to the private sector, right? So let's go. It says, here's an updated summary of our entire conversation, tracing how discussion evolved from U.S. stablecoin policy to broader global blueprint for programmable money, right? Taking a walk through some woods right now, getting off the streets, right? So it says, key discussion points: U.S. strategy, private stablecoins over CBDCs, right? So it says, a policy shift, right? The U.S. has largely set aside plans for a direct retail central bank digital currency, right? Issued by the Federal Reserve, choosing instead to lean on regulated, dollar-backed private stablecoins like the USDC, right? Which is a US stablecoin, right? And it says the illusion of privacy. While marketed as a free market alternative, private stablecoins offer virtually the same tracking, identity mapping, right, and remote asset freezing capabilities as a CBDC due to the public blockchain transparency and mandatory KYC, which is know your customer, and AML, which is anti-money laundering regulations, right? The Palantir model. And this is something that a lot of people don't know, right? So Palantir, right, was originally the plans of the government, the CIA. But because there would have been massive public backlash to the government gathering this massive amount of data on its citizens, what they did was the CIA, through its various financial arms, funded and started Palantir, right? Through one of their puppets, Peter Thiel, right? So let's continue. So it says liability buffer. By delegating the digital currency layer, right, to private issuers, the government achieves the surveillance outcomes of a CBDC while insulating itself from direct Fourth Amendment or civil liberty challenges. Right? Privatized enforcement. It says private firms, right, act as regulatory proxies mandated to build blacklisting and monitoring backdoors directly into their smart contracts to operate legally. So the very things that the government would do, right, for a CBDC, they're mandating these private stablecoin issuers to build those regulatory frameworks and operations in place within their smart contracts, right? So they can say, oh, it's not us who did it, it's a private entity, right? Psychological acceptance. The public naturally resists state-run monitoring, but readily surrenders data and accepts ledger tracking, right, when wrapped in commercial tech and private finance. Think about it. We regularly give over our information to Apple, to Google, to Amazon, to Microsoft, you know, but we would think twice about giving that to the government. So they're using the existing private tech infrastructure, right, and the trust in the private sector to lull the people into following, you know, this path. So it's not that, oh, America cares about the privacy of its citizens more than any other country, so they're gonna ban central bank digital currencies for the sake of their citizens. No, they're going about it a different way, just like they did with Palantir, right? It says the global architecture, redefining money, and this is the big thing, right? From messaging to programmable ledgers. Global finance is transitioning from isolated databases that send messages, example Swift, right, which is the Swift messaging system, to shared, programmable, unified ledgers backed by central banks. Example, the Bank of International Settlements Project Agora, right? I should look more into that, you know, probably do a lesson on that in the future, you know. The interlocking pillars, wholesale CBDCs. So behind the scenes, settlement layers strictly for central banks and large commercial institutions. Tokenized deposits and stablecoins. Retail-facing money disguised as standard bank balances or dollars. So what's happening is that these regular traditional banks that people already know and trust and are using, right, they're transforming, right, their back-end services to use wholesale CBDCs and tokenized deposits. So you might look on your computer or your phone, the app or whatever, and you see your bank balance and it doesn't look different. But behind the scenes, right, the technology that's powering it is not the same. It's tokenized deposits, it's wholesale CBDCs, all working on the blockchain ledger, right? So you don't see that first part, right? Digital ID, the access gate, cryptographic credentials attached to wallets that enforce compliance and access in real time, right? So now they're going to start to tie your digital ID to your bank account, right? In Jamaica, we have the National Identification System that's starting to roll out, right? Different countries have their different names for their digital ID, right? The transition blueprint, gradualism plus crisis. Back-end stealth, updating the interbank plumbing first so the average consumer sees no change in their everyday app interfaces. It looks the same, right? Asymmetric nudges. Make policy rails artificially slow, expensive, and burdensome while making tokenized rails instant and cheap. So the existing infrastructure, they frustrate you with that. The ACH transfers and the SWIFT transfers, they make that slow, they make that expensive, right? They make that full of issues, right? Tied down with a bunch of paperwork and stuff like that, right? To what? To nudge you into the direction that they want you to go, right? And then there is crisis-driven codification, using economic shocks, bank runs, or geopolitical crises to pass sweeping, complex, must-pass, quote-unquote, legislation that conditions emergency liquidity and relief on adopting the new ledger identity infrastructure. So the core takeaway, the transformation of the global financial system, it is not just an incremental upgrade to electronic banking, because that already exists, right? It is a transition to programmable ledger money by combining quiet back-end gradualism during calm periods with rapid crisis-driven legislation during emergencies. Global authorities are building a public-private monetary framework that accomplishes complete transactional visibility, right, and conditional control without needing public consensus. This is happening right under your noses, right? And it's happening without you even noticing if you don't pay attention. This is why the prophets are out. Isaiah 62 verse 6, I have set watchmen upon thy walls, O Jerusalem, which shall never hold their peace day nor night. He that made mention of the Lord, keep not silence, give him no rest till he establish, until he make Jerusalem a praise in all the earth. We are the watchmen, who are out letting you know what's coming, letting you know the plans, the devices of the devil, Satan, right? So these things don't catch you off guard, that you're not ignorant, right? Through what? Through lack of information, intelligence, or willingly ignore this information, So it's there. It's there, right? And it's being set in a very subtle way right now. So hopefully, this lesson was edifying. Until next time, Shalom.